2025 begins right now. Good morning and welcome to Get Up. A very happy New Year to one and all. J-Mac, welcome. Happy New Year, guys. Dominique, Mike Tannenbaum ready to go. We got Paul Feinbaum up early. We got Greg McElroy up early. We got tons of sports to dive right into, people, as the year turns. And it begins with the first of four college football playoff quarterfinals. Fiesta Bowl last night. Penn State, Boise State started fast. Penn State, first quarter, Drew Aller. He'll be a first-round pick someday, Dominique. Look at the time that he has.
Yeah, I mean, the arm strength and athleticism, I think, is attractive. So that's a great pass right there to start this off for James Franklin in the Penn State and Indy line.
Tyler Warren with a catch in the corner of the end zone. It's 14-0 Penn State. And then Ashton Jeanty, he could be a top 10 pick this year, but wait a minute, the mistake. On the sideline, the ball punched out.
Oh, yeah, I know tips and overthrows you got to get them. I didn't know about these errant sideline fumbles. You got to be ready for everything, I guess.
Penn State up 17-7 at the half. Third quarter, J-Mac, Boise State making it a game. It's still 17-7, but off the play action, look how wide open Matt Lauder winds up.
Oh, my goodness. Somebody has to cover him. That's in the secondary where you see everybody with their palms up looking at the sideline like, who has this guy?
It's 17-14. In that case, the end zone had him. Ensuing Penn State drive, though, Aller again. Look at the time. That's Warren's second touchdown. It's 24-14. We go to the fourth quarter. I want to show you Ashton Jeanty. This, by the way, is on a 3rd and 21. He picks it up. He would go 30 carries, 104 yards. His first game all year under 125. He finishes 25 yards shy of Barry Sanders' single-season record. In the meantime, for Boise State, this was a huge storyline. That's one of two critical missed field goals that they had that could have changed the complexion of this game in the second half. In the meantime, the other way, Penn State, this one is turn out the lights time. Nicholas Singleton, 58 yards, and they're not going to get him. Aller would throw 3 touchdowns, Warren would catch 2, and Penn State would win it 31-14. They advance to the Final Four, where they will take on the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia in the CFP semifinal. Penn State able to pick up its 4th win over a top 10 team under head coach James Franklin. That after losing 19 of its first 22 such games since he got there in 2014. And as we mentioned, they'll get another top 10 team next, either Georgia or Notre Dame. That will be decided tonight. So let us bring in our guys here. They're both in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl game tonight. That's Greg McElroy and Paul Feinbaum. And Greg, I will start with you. Watching Penn State, there were so many questions about them. The one really big game they had this year, they didn't look so good. Do they look like a legitimate threat in your mind right now to win the national championship?
Greeny, I really appreciate how Penn State is finally looking in the mirror, doing some self-scout, because that's kind of been the knock on James Franklin. There have been some blind spots with their offensive and defensive plans from time to time. This year, not the case. They went out, they got 2 experienced high-level coordinators, Andy Kotelnicki on offense and Tom Allen on defense. These guys have done an amazing job of knowing, hey, this is how we need to attack teams. They're now super committed to running the football. Since that loss to Ohio State, they've really leaned on their outstanding tandem of running backs, Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. They both now have over 1,000 yards on the season. They're the only tandem in the country to have that. And they also now are marrying up that run game with play action. Drew Aller's got a great deep ball. They have pretty good weapons on the outside, but they can't really create separation with those weapons unless they have the threat of the run. So I love how Andy Kotelnicki's kind of putting this offense together, and with their path, they now will meet the winner of the Sugar Bowl tonight, Notre Dame and Georgia. That's probably going to be a physical bloodbath, and they have an extra day's rest. So they might be in better shape physically going into the semifinal game than their opponent, which means if they can get through that one, it's a 1-game season for the national championship.
Remarkable. I mean, that's not something we would have seen coming. Paul, let me come to you on the other side of this, because there were so many questions about Boise State. Look, there have been so many questions about the teams that did and didn't make it, and we saw what wound up happening yesterday. We're going to get a little more deeply into that last night. But in your mind, what, if anything, did Boise State prove last night?
They proved that they're a very good football team, but they failed miserably, Greeny, on the biggest stage, and they had more miscues. They had more penalties than any team they have had in 20 years. They couldn't kick field goals. The mistake I think that we have in this system is they should have had to play on the road in the first round, and that would have settled whether they belong or not. They shouldn't have had a bye. They shouldn't have been sitting there waiting last night. But they're a very good football team. They just were not ready for prime time, and that's where they were last night.
We got 3 quarterfinal games on the schedule today. We got Paul Feinbaum and Greg McElroy with us. Paul, Texas is a 13-point favorite over Arizona State. Who do you like in that game today, Paul Feinbaum?
Greeny, I like Texas. I think they're one of the most complete teams in the country. And Arizona State has been fantastic, but I think on this stage, Texas will prevail.
Greg, if tomorrow morning we are sitting here talking about Arizona State pulling off what will be an enormous upset, what will we be saying? How will they do it? How will they win this game if they do?
They've forced a lot of mistakes by Quinn Ewers. I think that's really the only pathway to victory for Arizona State. Texas is too good defensively. I don't think Arizona State can completely move down the field over and over and over again. They're going to need some short fields, which means they're going to have to take advantage of some mistakes that Quinn Ewers is likely going to have to throw. And under pressure, under duress, he has not been very good since he's come back from his ankle injury. Just 3 yards per drop back against pressure. He takes a bunch of sacks, and his QBR is in single digits. So he's really got to play well against pressure. But Arizona State struggled to generate it most of the year.
Again, it's a double-digit spread in that game. The middle game today, the middle is the wrong word, but you know what I mean? In the order in which they will be played, it's the Rose Bowl. It's Ohio State and Oregon. It is a rematch. Ohio State's a 2.5-point favorite. Paul, who do you like?
Like Oregon, Ohio State has been the most talented team at times, the best team at times, but they're not the most consistent team. And that's what Oregon has done. Although they struggled early, they have been unreal down the stretch. I'm going to go in with the Ducks in this one.
It's going to be interesting to see how the additional layoff here winds up impacting Oregon. I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage. Greg, do you think Ryan Day has the best team in America?
That's a great observation, though, Greeny. Think about the sloppy play from Boise State last night. Maybe the layoff leads to rust, so I think that's something worth monitoring. But yes, Ryan Day's team has the highest ceiling, which means they're the best. If they play their A game, no one's beating them. They're going to have to play down to the level of the competition for someone to overtake them. And the good news is, now, I do think Oregon is more well-equipped to take advantage of some of the weaknesses that Ohio State may have than most teams. But those weaknesses appeared to have gone away based on what we saw in the performance against Tennessee in a resounding and dominant victory over the Volunteers. So, yeah, I think Ohio State's the best team. I think they'll win tonight, and I think they got a real shot at going the distance.
Again, they are the favorite tonight, which is fascinating, against the number 1 team in the country. And then tonight, you guys are both there. Georgia, a half-point favorite over Notre Dame. Can't ask for much more in a game in the build-up than this one. Paul, who do you like?
I like the Dogs, and I understand the narrative without Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton starting for the first time. But to me, Georgia has proven it all year long. They've lost a couple of games, but they had the most difficult schedule in the country. Notre Dame has not had that type of schedule, and then that loss to NIU still gives me the creeps, even though it was in September. Give me the Dogs.
Greg, obviously, you're on the broadcast of that game tonight, so we'll not ask you to make a pick, but we will ask you, what is the thing you are watching most closely? What in your mind is the single most important factor in what will decide this game?
Well, knowing the position I played, Greeny, I really wanted to ask these coaching staffs about their quarterbacks, and they were willing to talk about them to an extent, but they all both kept reverting back to the line of scrimmage for whatever reason. Much to my chagrin, I had to talk a lot about offensive and defensive line, and might be talking a lot about it tonight, I might add. So it's going to be a line of scrimmage game. O-line for Notre Dame has gotten better and better and better as the season's gone along. Georgia's finally healthy along the defensive line. They should be in great shape. And then vice versa, Notre Dame lost arguably their most dominant defensive lineman in Riley Mills against Indiana. So his absence, how will that impact Notre Dame's front against somewhat inconsistent